Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Director of Event Programming at MediaPost. And this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me is Ann Hand, and she is the Chair and CEO of Super League Gaming. Hey, Ann.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, no, I'm glad too. You came highly recommended. As I always say, I want any referrals people, and you were one. And then I just had to look at your bio a little bit. Honored as one of Ad Age's leading women of 2022. You also were named as one of the 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs from Goldman Sachs, and also 100 most creative people in advertising, ages 40 at 40 under list. So you're slacking off a little bit, I think. Yeah.
Well, some of those awards have come at different times in my life, doing very different types of roles. So they look like a kind of an odd list when they get packaged together. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll unravel that as we talk today. But no, it's just obviously you stand out, and that's really what this is all
Thank you.
about. Women who stand out in the industry, and not only to hear your stories, but also for those watching can maybe learn a little bit along the way. So I appreciate that you're here to do that. And I have to start off with, first of all, okay, Super League Gaming. So obviously gaming, and you're all about experiences and the metaverse. So I want to ask you, if you were to create your metaverse, Ann's metaverse world, Ann's world, what would it look like?
What would it look like? Well, it might be green, representing the little, on a good day, I call it my little emerald jewel box. But when we all had to figure out how to make a makeshift office in our home, we had to, in my case, I took over the guest room. So I think Ann's world would be much more focused on creation and socialization. A lot of these open world games these days, it's really like a new version of a social media channel. It's just much more personalized and customized and interactive and sticky. And while there are many ways that you can also go into these immersive game worlds and compete, and I certainly loved going to the arcade as a kid. I was really good at Galaga. I had my games. I played a lot of competitive sports. But I think that over time in my career, when I got to get closer to roles that had a creative element, I realized there was a whole piece that was kind of untapped. So I think my piece would really start first with socialization, maybe be a little bit of like the equivalent of the digital cul-de-sac in my neighborhood growing up, where we all kind of come in and hang out. And then probably a lot around collaboration and building of cool things, maybe interior design themed, because that's kind of a little bit of a personal passion. Those roles you always wonder, would I have been good at that or had fun at that? I also think I always thought I'd be a really good like life coach or therapist. So probably there'd be some deep layer where we're trying to achieve some self-awareness objective.
As you get through the layers,
Yeah, decorate your home and then lay on the couch and get your problems off your chest.
Yes. Once you get through that, then we solve the world's problems and yours as well.
There you have it.
That is a good goal to have if I'm playing that game. And I would certainly, if you had this game, I would play it. But
That's
I have
right.
to know, what's going to be the most valuable NFT for
Oh.
the world, and think more personal. It can connect with work, but think on a personal.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I've had these moments in my life where certain creative elements have gotten unlocked. My dad painted some growing up. And in my late 20s, as I was going through some personal stuff, I started painting. And I go through waves. Sometimes I like to write creatively too, a little bit. But I have, I like the fact that dotted and throughout my home are a few of my own paintings that I've mixed together with ones that are really nice or nicer. And I like to throw people off, just like if I wear, fake diamond earrings with a good, real piece of jewelry. So I would hope I would be able to maybe see if maybe one or two of my most special paintings that mean a lot to me, because they represent, different times in my life, if they could be of value. And if all else fails, I have two of the cutest Wheaten Terriers on the planet. So I can just have a way you can adopt them digitally, and maybe I could make some money off of them.
Wow. I mean, as much as I would love your paintings, I'm such a dog freak. I think I would go for the pups. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially if I could capture their personalities and you could feel like you could have some fun with them in that digital playground, I think that would be a great one.
what are their names?
Rose and Muncie, and Muncie is for the town I grew up in. Yeah,
Oh, very cool. All
yeah,
right. So yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, and as we were talking about, alluded to earlier, you've had a lot of different phases in your career. You've
yeah.
worked in many different industries. You were at BP, Project Frog, Exxon, McDonald's, and here you are now in gaming. Talk about that. Even when you first graduated, like what did you envision for your
Mhm.
career, and how did it evolve to where you are today?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question because I get it a lot about the diversity of the companies I work for. But really, it does start at the heart of it of like I'm getting out of college, right? And I'm of a generation where, your goal was to get a job with a big company. That was making it, was getting that big name.
Yep.
And I was an econ major, liberal arts school. And I thought, oh, I guess banking. That sounds good. Banking. Yeah. Sounds like that's where the money is. And it's kind of cool and sexy. And I was had a Goldman Sachs scholarship in college. And so I interviewed with various banks that came to my campus, kind of got down to the finals for a couple of them, but didn't get any of them. And the one job I got offered was with Mobil Oil. Now, back then, there was no Google. So it said it was a marketing rep. And the starting pay was 31.5. And I was like, well, I've just won the lotto. Again, I'm dating myself now, but I thought, well, I guess marketing, that sounds interesting. It must be advertising. And they kind of intentionally didn't tell you much, right? They really just wanted somebody who was very like nimble and able to be kind of coached and trained into
Mhm.
being, this marketing rep role. So they were just looking for like basic skills. Um, I drove my car out to Fairfax, Virginia to the training center 2 weeks after graduation. I was in, a gal's suit, the suits that all the gals wore back then. And I was in a pretty elite class of about 17 of us, and people had turned down big jobs at Coca-Cola and banking jobs. And I thought, wow, I've nailed this. And then they informed us what a marketing rep does in oil companies, and marketing reps run gas stations. And so my first
Wow.
job out of university, I ran after training for a few months at a gas station convenience store that had a car wash and service bays. I ran 8 inner city stations in Philadelphia. And then I ran 20 and 30 and 50. And so that was the first big chunk of my career, was running 24/7 retail locations, brick and mortar, and in a diverse types of neighborhoods and areas. I'm from the Midwest, so that was a little bit of a culture shock in itself. I often say it could have been a reality show, like throwing the girl from Indiana into Philly. Um, but all kinds of things happen at gas stations,
I
given
guess.
they're open every day and every hour of the year. And I got a real eye opener, and I loved it. And what I loved most was I love the fact that whether it be a franchisee or a manager, these are these people's livelihoods. And it's not a glamorous job. And I really wanted to be respectful and have them feel respected for a job they do that's essential, and kind of change the nature and the culture of being proud to say you work someplace like that. They are obviously burdened by heavy turnover. But I love the creative side too. If you spin like the gondola around in the convenience store and you point the Doritos and Fritos towards the fountain machine, you can double your sales because you put salty and soda together. Like I was constantly doing tweaks to figure out how to sell more. And so it's kind of like being a mini business owner.
It sounds like it's
Really,
very hands-on. Like as you said, you didn't
extremely.
really know what marketing entailed, but
That's right.
there you were doing exactly what marketing is all about.
That's
And
right.
you sort of had to figure it out as you went.
And the thing that was important about that is really twofold. Number one, no matter where I went after, when I went to McDonald's or BP, whenever people would say to me, like, oh, well, where are you from? The presumption was always that I had been hired in some fast track program, maybe with an advanced degree. And I could say, no, I started actually in the stations. And it's kind of like starting in the mailroom. Nobody could take that away from me. And so I was always seen as an operator, which was very helpful. And the second reason it matters is because those big companies back then, they by intention were trying to turn you into generalists. So after that, I did a real estate job and then a finance job and then a strategy role. And by the time you added up all those experiences, I was able to graduate into running a bigger P&L and being seen as more of a CEO type than maybe just a marketing specialist or sales or a certain functional expertise.
Well, and I'm curious because when I speak with many of the women like yourself, and there's definitely a lot of zigzags. It's not that linear line, that linear path of your career. You've had a lot of
Yes.
zigzags, but it sounds like it ultimately, and I feel like you didn't necessarily go into your career knowing, okay, marketing is what I want. This was sort of how you went into, fell into it, but then you just sort of did everything as it needed, which ultimately now, as you said, brings you to a CEO position because that's where you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, it's funny, when I first was working my first 10, 15 years, I was very much in this place of like, just do a good job, deliver, hit your numbers, and things will emerge. And I was okay. I wasn't I always appreciated that I felt I wasn't trying to overmanage my career like so many of my friends were. Like, it's like, I've got to get to that title or that pay, and I like the fact that I was kind of letting it flow a little bit. What I would say about that is, by the time I then took a leap into small cap and startup, that was the first kind of tough kind of lesson, right? Because I just presumed that, hey, if I can run a $3 billion P&L and 3,000 people, I mean, how hard can it be to have a team of 10? Well, you're starting something that's never been done before. You don't have the infrastructure and the safety net that you have in a big company. And so I do think that while I was really letting it all evolve and flow inside a big company landscape, I had to reset a lot of those expectations and my relationship when I then went into early stage companies and learned some new lessons about myself. And I will say that there were moments where I thought, man, what am I doing? This does look zigzag. Have I just made a mess of my CV? I mean, I look like I'm all over the place in a way that hurting me?
Right.
And I had to find my own way through that, to reframe that in my own head and see that as my talent and skill set, that I'm highly nimble and versatile, that's a good thing. But when you're in the midst of some real kind of big career change, where you don't have the same control that you had previously, you need a reset. And it's not always an easy thing to just do quickly. It takes some time for you to process through it.
Yeah. And you said you had these lessons learned about yourself. And was that predominantly that you're nimble and agile, or was there anything else that sort of helped you? Because it sounds like this is one of the biggest impasses in your career, in the sense of really
Yes.
trying something different. And then maybe at that point, like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So
Yeah.
what else did you have to dig deep into, Anne, about yourself
Yeah.
that allowed you to get through that?
Well, the first thing is that, somewhat so, work had always come kind of easily to me in large companies. Maybe it is a little bit of my Midwesternness. My dad was an entrepreneur. He taught us all to be good at sales. I liked getting an A in school, so I wanted to beat my numbers. And I think the first hard lesson was just that, like, I was kind of known for always having a golden touch. And you go to an early stage company and the golden touch wasn't working. And it wasn't working because it was asking new things of me, and they weren't skills that I had. And also market forces. It's not always just, oh, I can always just do a great job. I had all kinds of things I had to examine, both internally for myself and for the marketplace. The second thing then I learned is I'm loyal to a fault because of the mission of the company, the team, the brand, I didn't want to give up. And even my dad would say, Anne never gives up. And sometimes you have to learn to give up because actually it isn't, the timing's wrong. I think I learned the hardest lesson with the first startup was timing's everything. And if your timing's off, you're wasting your time and more importantly, everybody else's time. And I think I learned a year or two too late that the timing was off, or accepting that the timing was off. And so that was tough. I certainly learned that I'm more resilient than I thought I was. Because let me say, like the countless nights of you lay in bed awake, worrying about just making payroll. I mean, I never thought about that in big companies. And so I appreciated the resiliency that I had. However, I'm now having to learn how to deal with new types of stress. And I think that I would wrap that all up in a bow and say, and the gift of it all ends up being the moment after I joined Super League. And I was about 2 years in, so I don't want to pretend it came fast. I was still wrestling with all those learnings. I was about 2 years in, and a very dear friend of mine, when I ran all the brands for BP globally, he was the head of our account at Ogilvy and Mather, the ad agency. And I was talking to him on the phone, walking around our parking lot at work. And I said, yeah, I feel like I'm always apologizing. Every panel I'm on, they're all like energy, gaming. And it bothers me. I can hear myself. And he's like, why don't you just shut up and tell them you're versatile? And I laughed. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, what if I did just accept that? And so I actually was at the Milken conference the next week. And somebody in the audience asked me the energy to esports and gaming question. And I just said, I guess I'm versatile. And the audience laughed positively.
Mhm.
And after that, I just let it go.
Yeah.
And it really, it helped me kind of close, I think, a little bit of a window or chapter for me of doing a lot of questioning and second guessing that was probably getting in the way of me being able to perform better, or sleep better, at least.
Well, I think that advice is awesome because I do agree. I think we tend to try to make, I don't know if it's it's not making excuses, but in an apologetic way. When you're not doing something, people want a cookie cutter career, and
Mhm.
and that's who they maybe hire. And I really feel like companies need to realize that nothing's cookie cutter, and it's actually beneficial to
Yes,
have these other experiences coming into play, because then it changes things up. It gives you things that maybe wouldn't
yeah.
have been thought about if it was that person who
And
followed that career.
I have to tell you, Lisa, I mean, it's crazy, but so I started using this word versatile more, refreshing my bio, or I throw that word in and you start saying and using that word more. And the craziest thing is that now it's like I've taken this thing that was really kind of like a little bit of like a noose for me. And I've turned it into, like, I don't want to say it's a superpower, but it's like, it's my thing now.
Mhm.
It's like, oh yeah, plenty. You can go talk to plenty of CEOs, but if you want somebody versatile, I'm your gal. And it's actually been it's almost supercharged me. And I talk to a lot of CMOs, existing CMOs of big brands, and I love kind of on the side that I just have fun just being a sounding board for them as they're thinking about their career. And we talk a lot about versatility and how to lean into that more and be known for that. And I mean, how crazy that that's the same thing I was apologizing for 5 years ago. Yeah.
No, and I think that's valuable for anyone listening to know that, one, it's not too late to, a lot of people I think say, oh, I haven't done that, so I'm not going to go for that particular
Good
position.
point.
But yet, if you look at all the qualities that are needed to do this job well, you might be bringing much more to it. You just didn't do that job. And so
Yeah.
I think that to sort of just say, let's just try it, let's go. And hopefully then also the hiring people take that into account as well. So I think
Yeah.
that's definitely valuable. Well, and going a little bit more on because obviously you started figuring things out yourself, but I would guess probably most people always, kind of thought you exuded confidence, like you were in these high power positions, even though in
Mhm.
your head you were trying to wrap your head around the career path. But how do people maybe get you wrong? Like when they see you, and not just career wise, like just maybe
Hmm,
even someone, it could be someone work related, but you're seeing them at a social gathering, or people
yeah.
personally in your life. What is it that maybe they see that they think you are, but that actually that's not necessarily completely correct?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say the people who know me more personally and professionally, but personally, I think always kind of think, oh, she'll figure it out. Or she's kind of got it figured out. She's smart. She'll, so they see me as very capable, which is very nice, right? And it does boost my confidence that they have so much faith in me, but it doesn't allow me to express failure at times. I've had to learn. And one thing I started to do, because I realized that even worse at work, this notion of me always having the answers or always kind of little bit being perceived, especially in a big company, as kind of, you know, not want to say perfect, but Ann will get the promotion.
Mhm.
Ann will, I think the first time that I started to take some of that pressure and noise away was I was going through a divorce in my late 20s, and I was hiding it from people at work because I was embarrassed or ashamed or, and finally I just put it out there. And the wave of people who almost started talking about their lives, and it was an eye opener for me of like, I don't have to have this veneer of having it all figured out. It's actually getting in my way,
Yeah.
just even for friendships at work. And so I started kind of being willing to just, yeah, I don't expect everybody to have to disclose their whole life stuff. That's your choice. But I just started being, I always felt I was very real, but I think I needed to learn just to be more real at work.
Yeah.
And it changed my relationship, not just with my peers, but people who worked with me. And it didn't hurt me at all with the higher ups that I wasn't perfect, that I had plenty of flaws. So I think I've done a good job at work of putting out, hey, here's what I'm good at. Here's the stuff I think I'm good at. I'm going to lean into that, but actually here are some gaps I have. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Or I need you to join my team to complement that. So I vocalize that a lot and have really practiced vocalizing that since I'd say my, early to mid 30s. Probably the thing sometimes when we have new hires in the company, they don't believe it. Like, she's the CEO. She doesn't really mean that. Oh
Mhm.
God, I didn't answer that question right on the call, or and like they'll slack me and be like, sorry about that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you think I had it all figured out? I still don't have it figured out. And I'm in my 50s. Like, so it takes people, once they see me in action, they're like, wait, she really is. Like, I don't expect perfection. I'm an 80-20 type of gal. I love to collaborate. When I'm under stress, I can become a little bit more directive. The impatience kicks in. But generally speaking, when I have a problem, I first solve it by going and talking to people. I don't just bury my head in the data. I know things. I've seen the patterns and I put it all out there because I say to people, just know I'm like this. So if you're not getting the right result from me, like when people work too hard to ask me for something, I'm always like, just tell me what you want. 9 times out of 10, I want to give it to you because I'm a pleaser. You don't have to do that dance with me. So, I try my best to really help people understand who I am. I probably do it better at work than with my family because I still protect my family.
Yeah.
I don't want my dad or my sisters to be worried or my husband. And so I probably with them say, it's okay, I'll figure it out, even if right now I don't know how I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so that's probably something I need to work on is being more vulnerable
There's
that way.
you, the middle child.
Youngest of 4 girls.
Youngest. Oh, because usually I feel like well, it's either the older, depending on the dynamic of the relationship, or the middle who kind of wants to be the fix it. Like, okay, let's keep the peace, let's make this whatever, and it sounds like there's a little of that in you, even as the younger child. But
I'm definitely the problem solver. And then we had an age distance difference that was enough that I was alone during high school with my parents and college. So I we went from the big family to like, it's all me. And I'm also going to try to want to go to any Cubs game or a Reds game that my dad wants to go to because he didn't get that boy. And, so I think there's a lot of things I want to kind of keep the family connected. I definitely play a role of being kind of the cheerleader. I did have somebody say that once, that the role you play in your family is the same role you play at work.
Yep.
And then like that next week, I thought more to myself as I watched what I even do. We have a big open plan space and I walk around and say hi to everybody.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of try to get people laughing and impromptu, let's go grab lunch. I am more of that social connector for sure.
Yep. No, and I think that's great. And I think ultimately what backing up a little bit was the fact you brought a vulnerability to yourself that basically, whether it's personal level or business level, people want to connect to that. A
Yeah.
facade is really cool to, look up to, but to be that's perfect, but the
Mhm.
one that they're going to connect to and have that better work relationship or personal relationship is the one that they can see you're not, like they're not going to feel so inadequate, like, what I
That's
mean?
right.
Like if they think you're so perfect, then they'll be like, well, what can I share with her? Because I don't even fit that at all.
That's
So
right.
I think that makes a huge difference.
And the thing too with CEOs, I think once you get that title, you're like, oh, I have to be the one to say what the vision is. I have to be, they expect that of me. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not doing my job. And I remember we had an all staff about 6 months ago, like a Zoom all staff. And I did say, because I thought when that's the other thing, when you're in early stage, you're pivoting a lot. It's not like it's all real clear what your business model is. And I remember saying to a friend beforehand, do you think it's okay that I say, this is where I think we're going, but I need your help because I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Like, can I say that? And this friend of mine was like, say it.
Yeah.
Say it because it's the truth. Like better to tell the truth. And again, that's like a lot of my Midwestern DNA. Like it's like I'm very transparent, but it's like, yeah, the risk in doing it is they could be like, well, she's not a very good CEO. She doesn't know exactly, the details of our vision, but at least it was truthful. And that's the leadership style I can offer and try to surround myself with the right people to fill in
Yep.
and create that right experience where together we can paint that North Star and pull it off going there.
Well, and that is the role of a good leader, the one who not only, no one can do it all. So bringing in the right people and acknowledging where you are good,
Yeah.
and where you need the help. And so that's the perfect recipe. And I want to, because you've mentioned it a few times, being from the Midwest. So obviously, I know you're very proud to be.
I am.
we can totally see that. But you did spend time in your career in the UK and in China, and I think you have a dual citizenship in the UK.
Yeah.
US UK citizenship. So I want to ask you about that because obviously there's like, going to a new country, especially if you're talking China where there's a language barrier. I'm not sure if you speak Chinese.
No,
but
no.
so talk about what was the scariest thing or the most thing that maybe you had to that you were surprised, you didn't expect, that you really had to adapt to, or something that just kind of threw you.
Well, so my first assignment overseas was in Hong Kong, which, isn't as at the time, it was right around the handover, kind of 99, 2000. Wasn't as scary as getting, immersed into the middle of mainland China. But it certainly was very challenging to the senses, right? And I would say with that assignment, because I was still in a US company's office that was predominantly Chinese, but everybody was speaking English. I think there it was more about like just understanding and respecting more customs and where things that we'll do are different. In fact, one of the reasons, this is where I kind of had it easy on that first assignment, is they intentionally said, so many of our young Chinese talent are afraid to speak in meetings where their boss is present because they think it could be seen as a sign of disrespect. But from working in our Chicago headquarters that if it's said the correct way, it's not disrespectful. You're just participating. So a lot of my objective when they sent me there, it was a finance role. I was horrible at it. But they said, we want you to help them see that they can speak appropriately in the meeting and it's okay. And because we really think this is our future leadership in China, but they're going to still have to interact, right, with other, other teams and countries around the world. So I think I had it a little easier there. I'd say when I moved to London, and I ended up being there about 9 years. Now, I thought I was going to be there for 1 or 2. So that was a strange thing when all of a sudden it's like your third, fourth assignment. And you're like, gosh, am I ever going home? Maybe not. I mean, it's London, so I'm not going to complain.
Mhm.
But I'd say there was more of the challenge. And the challenge was that I was always in global roles the whole time I was there, and increasingly bigger leadership roles. And whether I was in headquarters or I was running these global teams, I was often inheriting not only a leadership team that was diverse across many different countries, but also almost all of them were older than me and male. In fact, well, they all were older than me, and all but one were male in those couple assignments I had. And that was, I was very sensitive to what it meant to them. And it was hard for them at first because they're looking at me and saying, you're not British, you're female, you're young. Why are you're so young? And what I learned there, and I think it's something that I did even when I was working with my gas station owners early on, who said, who are you? Where are you from? Oh no, another one. I wanted to spend time getting to know each of them, hearing what their pain points were, and then figuring out, how do I add value? They don't need me to figure out how to run Spain or Portugal for them. They know how to do that operationally, but what frustrates them? Oh, we never get capital, Ann. Or corporate doesn't respect this business. We don't get the right talent. And so I think I do a good job of going in and figuring out, if I could give them something, how could I use my skills? And a lot of it was always about repositioning the nature of the business I was inheriting to get it more respect, to get it more money, and to make it be more successful. And that's not that different than what I wanted to do at the gas stations, really. It's the same thing. And so, and as soon as I started contributing, they all of a sudden, their loyalty to me and my loyalty to them, couldn't be penetrated. And so I did have a reputation for building fun teams that really repositioned themselves and just had fun cultures to them. I also ran very flat teams. One of my biggest pet peeves is somebody speaking negatively or rudely downward, disrespecting the personal assistant if you want to find a way to get on my bad list, that's the way. And so once they started seeing my behaviors in action about the respect across each layer, I think now we were friends, and now we could get on with trying to do something special business wise. It shocked me, though, from a culture point of view, how many walls are still up, especially like between European countries. Spain doesn't talk to Portugal. Portugal's mad at France, and it's all rooted in a lot of historical, like battles. And I was a very naive American who didn't get all of that. So I spent a lot of energy working on the cross-country leadership. And how do we figure out how to realize that we're nothing if we're not Europe and China and all together? The company doesn't care about us as just Spain and Portugal because we're not big enough. But if we're together and we're seen as one, I can go fight for that capital. And so I do think cultural astuteness started to become a real strength for me because these wonderful country leaders that were part of my leadership team, gave me a chance, frankly. China is very interesting because my teams in China, it was a newer business. They were sponges. I mean, anything you said, they were just like, okay, and they would run with it. So it's different in emerging markets where they want every idea you have. And then you've got, more advanced kind of mature markets where now you're trying to take something that's maybe it's slowing down in its growth and figure out what its role is relative to the greater pie. But I had a ball doing it. And I do think my cultural sensitivity will forever be different. And I wouldn't have gotten, that chance if I hadn't. I think you have to go live and work there to really see it in real time.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like, I think just from what you're saying, the lesson learned to take from that is don't get defensive on what maybe people are thinking of you, show your value, and then things will work out, at least in the right environment. So, and I do think that's important. I think we can
Yeah.
get defensive and want to like say, no, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, or whatever, or just put up a wall if you face those kind of things. But
I
just,
would also say too, I use my sense of humor a lot, so I'd say like to the head of France, like, what gives? Like, why don't you guys ever want to talk to the Netherlands? Once we started being able to have some fun laughing about the different problem solving styles of different areas or different functions inside, we did a lot of personality analysis just for fun, just to break some of that down and just lighten things up a bit.
Yep.
So that helped.
well, I want to, we have to wrap this up, but I do want to, I like to get a little real this is on the very much the personal side. Your what do you sort of your secret passion, your, like your little must have, whether it's a certain food or a certain, binge watching or whatever it may be. What's that one thing that you need to have? Your guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I won't say a martini, but that has crossed my mind. No, my guilty pleasure is 100% the New York Times crossword puzzle. I've been doing it for many, many years. And there was a time where I couldn't finish a Sunday. And I now finish a Sunday, in about 40 minutes. And everybody knows in the household on Sunday morning, let her go, do her thing. I do it in pen, the old fashioned way, but and I know it's all rote and everything else, but it doesn't matter. The fact I can finish under an hour, I still jokingly say to one of my sisters, maybe one day she'll go with me to that New York Times crossword competition. And not to compete, but to hang out, we think, in the bar lobby and meet all the fascinating people that love to do the New York Times crossword.
Yeah. I was totally there when I lived in New York, and you can correct me if you don't, but for me, as long as I did the crossword, like I would get all of the New York papers, and I actually was working in a newsroom, so we'd get them all, so I could even grab them all for free. And I would do each of the crosswords every day, but that helped me then be able to do the New York Times crossword. I never got it in under an hour. It was probably 2 hours for me. I did do it in pen, but if I did if I had missed the ones during the week, it was more difficult. But if I did them all during the week, it sort of just made me more prepared for the Sunday crossword.
And a lot of people don't know that like Saturday is harder in many ways because you don't have the theme and all of that. But it is funny, my family will say, if I say it's like noon on Sunday, or God forbid Sunday night, and I haven't done it, they're like, what's wrong? And I'll be like, well,
awesome.
nothing. I just got busy in my closet, but usually it's my quiet time Sunday morning. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. My coffee and that, but mine would be my quiet afternoon or, whatever. Like
Yeah.
It would be okay, a little of the morning, then come back to it. But no, thank you, Anne. I love that about you, and just hearing everything. It was just really fascinating to hear everything you've been doing. So
Well, thank you.
for joining.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And thank you for watching. And again, as I always say, just that is how we got Anne. I want any recommendations. If there's a woman, a marketing executive woman who impresses you, you want to hear more about, just let me know who, and I will do my best to get them. So thanks again for watching, and thank you.
Thank you.